chasing the night, wanna dance to the light, pull the stars from the sky, just two hearts running wild.
Welcome to the Meander Travel Podcast. This is episode number 39 and part 2 of our epic safaris in Tanzania. In part 1, we discuss what it takes to plan an adventure like this, and we cover 2 wonderful parks. In this episode, we discuss the unique Ngorongoro crater and the iconic Serengeti, and we share stories of some incredible animal experiences that are not for the faint of heart. So stay with us as we talk endangered animal sightings, hunting lions, tenting on the Serengeti, and magical sunsets. Wheels up!
We're gonna be two hearts running wild.
So thank you for joining us today for part 2 of Tanzania. My name is Julie, and I'm once again delightfully joined by my husband, Tony.
Welcome.
And our 2 friends, Brian and Jennifer, who traveled with us on this trip to Africa. Hi, guys.
Hi, great to be here.
Glad to be here.
Thanks for coming back again for part 2.
So, as Julie mentioned in the intro, we covered a couple wonderful parks, Tarangire and the Manyara National Parks in episode 1 of this series. But we have 2 more to tell you about in this one. And let's face it, these are what a lot of people would consider the big ones in Tanzania.
So, okay, the Ngorongoro crater is a really unique experience. So this crater is the world's largest inactive and intact caldera, and it is a protected conservation area and a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which you guys know we love to go to those. It is approximately 600 meters down to the floor, and it spans over 8,300 square kilometers. It is literally teeming with over 25,000 large animals, including the Big 5, which was a big deal for Jennifer, and the critically endangered black rhino. It's kind of like a big wildlife fishbowl, in my opinion, but there are no giraffes here because of the really steep sides.
So the park is open from 6 a.m., thank God not a minute too earlier than that, to 6 p.m. And if you're on your own, you will need to get a permit to get in. Otherwise, your tour company will take care of that for you. It's a strictly regulated area, and you are only allowed a 6-hour window for your visit to avoid overpopulating the roads because there's a lot of four-wheel drive vehicles that are running around out in the middle of nowhere. Let's discuss the crater experience from start to finish and some of our thoughts on it. And we'll also get into some more stuff about where we stayed and all that stuff after that. Jennifer, what's your thoughts of when you came across on the rim of this caldera, this volcano, empty volcano, and saw what you saw?
Well, even before that, on the drive up, I was a little bit nervous because you're winding up the volcano basically on curves, and it's like one lane in each direction
in the dark.
And big trucks, yeah, because it's before sunrise, and big trucks are coming at you. It was a little nerve-wracking, I would say, getting up there. And then once we got to the top, do you remember as we saw like the sunbeams coming through the clouds as we looked out over the vastness of the crater?
That's when we were at the gate.
Yeah, it was amazing.
To get in, and we had to park and wait for our guides to go and check us all in with our permits and whatnot. And we had like 20 minutes of standing around outside of our Forerunners or Jeeps or whatever you want to call them. And yeah, the clouds were good, but the sun coming through those clouds with all those sunbeams down into the middle, because you could see all the way across the caldera, all the way across, well, let's just call it the volcano, the bottom. And you're like, we want to get down there. We want to get down there so bad. We couldn't wait.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Brian, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, you guys kind of already covered it, but it's just the vastness, right? You get up there and you're just seeing this vast openness, and you can't really see the animals at that point because you're way up on the tippy top. But like you said, there's 25,000 animals down there, so it's pretty fun as you adventure down, and it's kind of restarting the whole thing of, I saw the first this, I saw the first lion. As you go down into the caldera, you're seeing some animals. They might be kind of far away, then you just slowly get closer and closer to them.
I thought it was, well, first of all, too, when we were up at the top, we took a picture of the 4 of us, and somebody took it from behind us, and we were looking at the crater, so it was of our backs. And that picture is like really special to me because we were in Puerto Rico together, and we were on the top of the mountain in the El Junque jungle, and we took a picture of the 4 of us, like the backs. And that was kind of like our cover on that photo book that we did. And so then when we recreated that photo, but looking at the caldera, I just thought that was special. It was kind of like a come around, moment. And that view, that vista is so expansive. And yeah, the animals are so far down there. And it takes a while to kind of meander your way down with the line of cars that are all entering at the same time. But it's wild to think about there's this big giant bowl and all these animals are in it. And there's some different kinds of places where they live. There's some pools for hippos and grasslands, and then some jungly areas where some of the other animals are in trees. And it's a wild thing to think of because they can leave. They can leave anytime they want, but it is a steep side. And so some animals aren't capable of doing that, but others can.
So before we get into being down in the bowl and seeing the animals and all the stuff that goes on down in there, we should talk a little bit about where we stayed, because we came from Mariana, I can't even say it now, the other park prior, and we came into the town that's just prior to Ngorongoro, and we stayed at the Acacia Farm Lodge. Now, this was an hour and 15-minute drive to the entrance at the top of the rim, and that's not ideal. That's, in my opinion, I would have rather stayed up on the rim there's a bunch of hotels and resorts that are very, very beautiful views down into the valley, into the caldera. We didn't get to stay there, and we booked this like a year in advance, and they still didn't have any availability when we did this, so it was already booked out. So we stayed an hour and 15 minutes away, and it was a very beautiful place. We loved the actual place we stayed at, but it was not up on the rim. I wish we could have changed that, but it made for a 6 a.m. entrance at the gate, much, much earlier start, because we had to start way earlier to get up there and get to the gate by the entrance start point. So also, when you came up into the entrance to the park, does anybody remember that it looked like you're going into Jurassic Park with they had this huge entrance gate, and you're like, I felt like we were going into Jurassic Park.
Yeah, no, I remember that too. It was very, expansive. It was like a big sign that you were driving under. It definitely had that feel.
Okay, so one of the cool things that we were looking for in this park in particular, and actually this is kind of going to the end of the day, but we were looking for one of the big five. Jennifer, why don't you tell the story of what we were looking for and how it came about?
Yeah, we were looking for the black rhino. It was the one that we hadn't seen yet. And
because we had seen other big ones in Tarangire, we had seen the lion, we'd seen the elephant,
the buffalo.
Giraffe.
We saw that we had the leopard experience. Yeah.
But we were missing one.
Yeah. We needed the black rhino. So we'd looked and hadn't seen it. Hadn't even known that there was an indication that it was there or visible. And we were about to leave. And we asked Tom to just take one more swing around. Just like one more, let's just try one more try.
Tom was our guide.
Yeah.
In case you hadn't heard part one, Tom was our guide that we had for the entire time we were in Tanzania. And he picked us up in Arusha, and then he dropped us off after the Serengeti. But he was with us the whole time. Top-notch guide.
Actually, there's another plug for having a private tour group, because someone else might have wanted to get back to the hotel. And we were like, no, can we just take another swing through to see if we can find this black rhino?
We were pretty spent.
Yeah, it had been a long day. But we did, and he'd heard like on the radio that they were seeing something, so he pulled right up and got right into this area where there were a bunch of safari vehicles, and off in the distance we could see a mom and a baby black rhino.
Which was neat to have the baby.
Yes, and a little warthog.
No, it was not close though. I mean, it was a long distance.
No, it was a long way away.
But we still got to see it.
Yeah, we did.
So the way that Tom heard about this is, these guides, they all work in huge groups. There's so many of them on this valley floor that if somebody sees something, if they got a buddy that's down there, like, hey, you got a good tour group, they'll wire, they'll walkie-talkie to each other and let each other know, so that, hey, get your butt over here real fast because there's a lion here that's, on the prowl or something, like whatever it is. And somebody had let him know that the black rhino had just been seen, and nobody had seen it all day. So,
and also they must have a network or people that they keep seeing all the time and knowing, because sometimes we'd come up upon another vehicle and he would actually know the guide, and they would talk and exchange stories and whereabouts of different animals and stuff.
So let's talk about what it looked like to drive around down there because I mean, these roads are vast. You can see everything. You can see for a long way, but sometimes like you might see that there's a conglomeration of safari vehicles all piled in, one area and you're like, "Ooh, there must be something good over there." But then you look and realize, but we're actually not that close. Like that's actually going to take a long time to get to that spot. So it makes it a little bit tricky. But like I remember we were talking there was a hippo pool, and that was really fun to watch. And we kept trying to get the hippos like with their mouths open so you can get that iconic shot with like all the teeth. But then as we were watching that, I don't know if it was Tony or who, but someone was like, "Oh my gosh, there's an animal off there to the right." And then do you guys remember what that animal was?
Civet cat.
Okay, it was so cool. It was a totally different kind of animal that you expected in that area around that hippo pool. And so that just means you have to keep your eyes peeled like 360 degrees because you might be looking at one thing, but behind you, there's some other animals that you might not have noticed if you didn't keep your eyes out. It's wild.
So I actually started doing that after a while. Like, hey, we're all looking at something on this side of the truck, out the window and where you stand up and you look through the top of the roof, and like, hey, we're looking over here for so long. This is exactly what's going to happen. We're going to miss something on the backside of us. So I would just turn around and scan with my binoculars or my camera just to see if I could catch something on the other side because you kind of want to be the person that spots something for the first time. Because, there's a little kudos in the van or the car when you're like, all right, look over there. There's this, And we did that. Everybody got to do that for the birds for me. So that was nice.
Yeah, I just remember, I think you said at the beginning, there's like different ecosystems that are in this crater. So there's a spot that, has trees and it's very green, it's very lush. So then there's, very safari, dry land kind of on one side of it. And then, like you said, there's these hippo pools. And so I think just we spent time kind of in each of those ecosystems. And yeah, I remember spending a lot of time sitting by the hippos because we already had seen lions. We did see lions there. But for me, I remember a lot of the hippos and sitting and watching the hippos and kind of that whole scene a lot.
Sometimes the lions are not that exciting because by and large, they're pretty lazy. And so a lot of times they're just laying there. And you're like, okay, well, now that we've watched you sleep for a few minutes, all right, I guess we'll go do something
Especially
else.
as it got warmer in the day.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'd see them more active. I remember I remember driving into the crater and we saw lions walking around. But then as you get to the hotter part of the day, a lot of times, they're just resting. They're trying to find some shade or just resting their energy.
Yeah.
And as you're driving around, keep in mind that much of the landscape is very tall grasses, right? So a lot of the animals are camouflaged in there. So you might be coming up and you see 3 or 4, safari vehicles. So you assume that there's something there to see, but you don't really know what it is because you can't see exactly what it is because it's kind of hidden in the grasses.
So I'm a geography buff kind of person. What we're talking about, if you want to look it up, is I'm going to spell it out for you. Ngorongoro. It's Ngorongoro. And it's basically just repeating itself twice. But this volcano, if you want to zoom in on Google Earth or on Google Maps or something like that and go to the satellite imagery, you can zoom right in down onto these dirt and gravel roads. They're mostly just dirt roads. And you can see the line of vehicles lined up at spots. Like you had to zoom around in the valley inside the caldera, and you had to look around, and then all of a sudden you'll see a whole bunch of vehicles. And I was like, I so badly tried to see if I could find a group of elephants or something, a wildebeest or whatever in the photo, but it's just so small that you can see the vehicles, but you can't see the actual animals. Maybe with a better program, but you can definitely see what we're talking about and the thousands of roads and miles of trails and stuff that go on this park. It's really cool to see from satellite imagery. It's really cool to see.
So let's get back to the Acacia Farm Lodge real quick. So that was our lodging that we stayed at when we were at the Ngorongoro crater. And it was a really lovely property. It was a farm-to-table property. So they have like a wonderful and huge garden there. So you're getting really fresh vegetables and, different kinds of things with their meal. But what did you guys think about that place? Because it was very different from the places that we stayed at in part 1. We had some traditional lodging with kind of like conical shaped hut, almost like decor. And then we also stayed at, what was the second one? Oh, more of kind of a...
Well, Russian and Tarangiri.
Yeah, okay. So I forgot. Yeah, so this one. What did you guys think about this one?
This one felt more modern. It was kind of, each of the units was kind of like a separate standalone, I don't want to say townhouse or something, but kind of. I mean, it was one level, but it was...
The other thing about this is that it's in the middle of a city, inside of a town, and it had walled compounds, so that it had a very large facility. It had its own, like, you could walk out into a park-like area. They had their own growing fields in the back where we got to walk around on a birding tour on their own property and saw where they grow all of their own vegetables for all the meals. And it's a very large property inside this town. So you would think you're out in the bush, when you're on grounds, but then you go outside the wall and you're in this town before you have to leave to go up the hill to go up to the park. But the thing I remember about that place the most is when we arrived. If you remember, we got out of the vehicles and they had these drinks for us. They had washcloths, washcloths to wipe off the dust from being on our day's journey. And then they gave us these awesome drinks that we all had multiple of. They weren't alcohol; they were just a juice drink. So that was what I thought was cool.
And I remember relaxing by the pool. We sat out by the pool and I think we played cards or something and had a drink.
I just remember Tony standing there with his binoculars the whole time because there was a lot of birds in those bushes and trees that were right there, which, by the way, we haven't mentioned binoculars the whole time. That's a very important thing you want to pack with you on a safari to Africa.
Yeah.
You want to have your binoculars. Brian, what did you think about that place?
Yeah, I think you guys covered it. I mean, it was nice. It was modern. I remember the birds. I don't think I have anything else to add.
It was not, I would say it's a great place to stay. But if you're going to drive and fly this far to go to this Ngorongoro Park, you're putting yourself an hour and 15 minutes. No, so we went up into the park, then back out of the park to this place again, and then back past the park entrance again when we went to go to the Serengeti. So we made this drive to and fro, which was an extra 4 hours of driving when you're already doing a lot of time in the vehicle. So my suggestion would be, if you can stay on the rim of the volcano, you stay there because you're that much closer to the gate. You get to sleep in a little bit longer. And when you get out of the park where you have been all day, you're wiped out, you're exhausted, you have a short drive back to your place, and then you have these gorgeous sunset views down into the valley. So that would be my recommendation.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Okay, so now onto the park that everyone has heard about, and there's a reason why. The Serengeti is massive. It is 30,000 square miles of a wildlife-filled plain, and this is where you see the vast herds of animals and where the Great Migration occurs. So if you can only go to one park, then this is where most people go because you just get more bang for your buck. It is hot, it is dry, or I guess depending on the time of year, but for us it was very hot and dry. And it's fairly flat for a lot of it. And I think we can all agree that as far as lodging goes, this was by far our favorite lodging experience, our favorite park. So Jennifer, why don't you describe what our accommodations were like at the Serengeti camp?
So within the Serengeti National Park, they can't have actual hotels. They have to be tent-like structures that could be moved. So we had tents, individual tents. So Brian and I stayed in one, and Julie and Tony stayed in their own tent. But when I say tent, you need to understand that it's raised up on a wooden floor platform, and there was a chandelier in the middle of the ceiling.
Oh yes, there was.
A nice king-size bed with a headboard and whatever. We had
Throw pillows,
running water. I had a hot shower in the morning. Flushable toilets. It was very luxurious. And I will say this was by far my favorite place to stay. It's up in my top 3, I'll say, of places I've ever stayed because it was, the deck of the tents and the door and the deck of the tents were faced directly at the sunset, and it was fabulous.
Another thing about that is this was our last stop in Tanzania. And we had talked about, hey, maybe we do this, we do that, we fly out of here, we come here first. They plan it this way. Like you don't start out in Serengeti and move your way back towards Tarangire and Manyara because this is the bang. This is like, wow. This is the wow factor that you get is when you go out into Serengeti. So you kind of move yourself west, and then either you drive back to Kilimanjaro Airport or you fly out of the Serengeti and you go elsewhere and you go on to what you're doing. But this is why it is so nice and plush, is that you want to have that wow factor for your last stop.
One other thing I would say is when we talked in the last podcast about the lodging there, and when we just mentioned our lodging at the Acacia Farm House, they were fine. They were great accommodations. They weren't necessarily totally additive to the trip. I mean, I would put the experience at this lodging as one of our great experiences of the trip. And I can't say that necessarily about the other lodgings.
Yeah, I think, and that was not just based upon having kind of this luxurious tent and the, you know, nice bathroom and showers and stuff that were in the tent, but it was the location of it. As you said, it was facing the sunset. I'm sure we'll talk about, you know, we just had a great evening, you know, sitting out. They built a big fire that was out there that we got to all kind of sit around. There was a Maasai warrior that we got to have conversations with, right? It was just, the whole experience is very memorable and just seared in my mind. In fact, as I can show you on my screensaver that I still have, is that picture from sitting on the deck there it is, you know, from sitting on the deck at the Serengeti. That's what I look at all the time, and it's still just, I think there was something, if you could remember one photo from the trip, that's like what's seared in my mind, is from, you know, sitting on that deck, looking out past the acacia trees and watching the sunset right out there from our tent.
At the Serengeti camp, they had a tradition. It was called a sundowner, and so that everybody in the camp would gather, and they had chairs set out with blankets, kind of in a half moon shape facing the sunset, and they would put a big bonfire there, and everyone would get a cocktail or a glass of wine or something and sit down and enjoy it and have conversation and stories with our Maasai warrior and each other.
So you mentioned the Maasai warrior. So these camps, you know, you're out in the middle of nowhere. There's a bunch of these camps all over. Like, there's a certain amount of tour groups that go out to the Serengeti, right? And all of them have a place that they can stay. Some of them are down and dirty probably, but for the most part, a lot of them are high-end, nice camps. You know, you can go for your camping style, but these are glamping for sure, like high-end glamping. And they all have to have protection because you can have the wild animals come right up on these cloth tents. And every camp that I know of that they were talking about has Maasai warriors. They hire somebody to be their security. Now, this isn't just a guy that is standing there with an Uzi. I mean, this guy stands there with a spear, and he stays up all night and walks the grounds. And if he hears or sees something, he shoos it away. Yeah. Now, that sound, is Julie imitating, is something that we heard outside of our tent, and we're talking right outside of our tent, probably within 5 feet. And we didn't know what it was. We just stayed in our tent. But the next day, we asked our guide, and he's like, that was a hyena. There was hyenas right around our tents, and he heard them, and he came over and, you know, made sure they left. But we could have had any kind of animal right outside of our tent. That's just how cool it is. And he carries a spear, by the way. Just a small story about him. He was so fascinating to talk to. He was one of the last guys in his Maasai group that actually, to become a man in their tribe, they have to kill a lion with their spear. And that has been a tradition for many, long time. But they don't do it anymore. Now they've stopped doing it. The groups have gotten to them and said, hey, can we just not do that? And they said, yep, they obliged. But he's one that still did. Anyways, we talked to him, like, and he's dressed in the full outfit, right? And we started talking to him, and he's like, I got some pictures. Let me show you. He pulls out his phone and shows us his TikTok account where he's got his family and whatnot. And he's an average guy wearing regular average clothes. But when he goes to work at the camp, he's in full Maasai outfit with his spear. It was pretty fascinating to hear him talk like that.
I'm sure that whole image goes over a little bit better with the tourists that like to see the Maasai warrior. And in some of these tours, you can actually go to some of their camps and stuff. You can go tour their village, the Maasai warriors village and stuff. But just
we
to
drove
give you,
by a lot of them.
Yeah, we did. But to give you an idea of what this camp kind of looked like, they had a separate tent for like your meals, and they had a relaxing tent. So if you wanted to go sit on the couch and read a book, or also facing the sunset area. So you could sit in there and, you know, have a social hour with you if you were with a really big group. Then there was like a little small bathroom that was off the side of that if you needed to use that and not have to walk all the way back to your lodging. And they would walk you everywhere. So when you would leave the dining area, they would walk you back to your tent. If you needed to leave your tent for whatever reason in the middle of the night, although we did have, like you said, little bathrooms in our tent. But if you needed to walk around, then you would, you could do that. They would have somebody with you. But it it was nice to know that we were being protected, but I'm thinking this is a fairly large camp and there's one Maasai warrior and there's animals out there. Like, does he see it all? Is he really going to get it? But the hyenas and a lot of those animals, they're not interested in us. They're interested in whatever food might be laying around. They don't care about us. But seeing the animals from our tent, there was zebras right behind us. When we were watching our sunsets, there was giraffes and all different kinds of animals just meandering by on their nightly trail. Meandering. Yeah, it was just so neat to be in that peaceful environment and have it was like watching a movie, but it was live.
Under the same name, on some TikToks, I have a bunch of the videos from this area and also with the zebras behind you and Jennifer sitting on the front patio. So you can always go look at that. All right, so now that we've talked a little bit about where we stayed, which was a highlight of it, let's talk about the park and the advantage of this huge park. We stayed 2 nights at this campsite, and our days out on the road were sun up to sundown. You could go all day, all night, as long as you wanted. And we were typically up and out of the tents by 6 and in the vehicles because the animals roam early in the day because of the cooler temperatures. And then they're also out in the evening. So sometimes you would come back in the middle of the day if you wanted to have lunch, but we had lunches out in the park. And then you come back for dinner after a long day.
So yeah, by the last day of our safari, there was only, I think, one iconic animal that we hadn't seen yet, and that was the cheetah. So for that particular day, that was kind of our main goal. And luckily, we had a really amazing guide who knew exactly where to go to see that. There's a certain area that the cheetah probably has its territory, and so we kind of headed that direction. And Jennifer, why don't you describe what happened then?
I think we came into contact with another vehicle, and Tom started talking to the other driver and found out that where to go to see the cheetah. And we drove right up to it. I think there were 2 other cars when we got there. Ultimately, we ended up being the only safari car there for a spell. It was out in the middle of the kind of
Serengeti.
Grass in the grassy area, perched on top of a termite mound or something, and it was awesome.
And they do that so they can get a better view when they're hunting. But it made for really fantastic photographs. I think some of our best pictures of the trip, that might be some of them, that cheetah.
And those termite mounds, it's only 2 feet off the ground, but these maybe 2.5, 3 feet. But those mounds give those cheetahs and the animals such a huge advantage of seeing long distances. And that thing was constantly swiveling its head, looking around. Even though it knew we were nearby, it didn't care about us at all. It was looking to see what can I go after, what prey is out there, and am I the prey? So he was very cautious. The other thing that we hadn't witnessed, and we'd seen all the cats and all the things that we wanted to see at that point, but one thing that we had not seen was, an attack, a kill, they say, and a lion attack in particular. So we weren't even sure if we wanted to see this necessarily, but it was all part of that circle of life. So we kind of wanted to see what it was, and all these things, they can be tricky to find and catch because lions don't hunt and eat every day. Sometimes they go for days, so in large, but the very sleepy and lazy cats a lot of the time. So when we would stop alongside of the road, we would just see them sleeping, and we'd should we wait? An hour later, we're like, okay, let's leave them alone. But we did get pretty lucky on this day. And Julie, why don't you tell us a little bit about how it started?
Well, fortunately or unfortunately for us, we were in the right place at the right time, and we got to watch the lionesses hunt, and it was absolutely spectacular. So now, spoiler alert here, in case you get sad about animals like I do, then the story we are about to share and that we're going to discuss is fairly traumatic on a lot of levels. But I want you to know that everybody involved, the animals involved, all survived. So that is the good takeaway. But we did witness something absolutely unreal. So Brian, why don't you take us back to when we're just even coming upon a lioness and our guide Tom is telling us what we might see. Why don't you set the stage for us?
Yeah, so this definitely was one of the highlights of the trip. This afternoon in general, we were seeing quite a few lions, and I think we had saw a male and a female, and we stood there for a while, taking pictures. But like you said, they were kind of just sitting around. Oh, they'd stand up, it'd be a big deal because they were, sitting down. But then eventually we came up upon 3 lionesses, and they were walking down the road. And just how close, we first were behind them, and you could pull up alongside of them. And we probably spent, at least 20 minutes, just following these lionesses as they're walking down the road. So various pictures, videos, kind of as much.
You could reach out the window and touch me if you wanted to.
We were so close, you could literally reach out and touch them. I mean, the pictures and the videos we have are literally just amazing. And we did this for a long time because this is the closest we had been. Even just seeing them walking was like activity you wouldn't necessarily always see when you saw the lion. So it was very exciting. Our guide was very patient with us, and we enjoyed it. So eventually, after we had exhausted all the pictures we could take and all the video we could take, we were going to drive away from them. So they were just walking on the road, so we kind of drove ahead of them. And as we were driving down the road, maybe 5 minutes, a half mile down the road or something, we happened upon, three or four buffaloes. One of them standing, most of them are just laying down in the grass, but they're kind of right off of this road, that we're driving down. They're not like they're far in a distance or anything. And our guide is like, you don't know what could happen. The lions are coming up the road. Maybe we should just sit here for a while. So, we kind of patiently watched. We're watching these buffalo just kind of stand around, and then we just keep looking backwards, and we're just watching these lionesses just. They're still coming. They're still coming. Like, so we know if they keep coming down this road, they're going to be very close to where these buffalo are sitting, because the buffalo are just sitting right off the road. So sure enough, I mean, we have the best seat. We're parked, I don't know how many feet you want to say back from where the buffalo are. And we're just watching these lionesses just keep walking closer and closer, eventually such that the three lionesses kind of split up, and we watch one of them go on the right. One of them, kind of goes left and goes ahead, and one walks literally right up next to our safari vehicle, and it stops. So, we've got pictures, we've got video of it literally sitting next to our safari truck, and it's just laser eyes on the buffalo, and it's not that far away. The buffalo are not that far away. So we're all sitting there. Go ahead, Tony.
So the thing about this, I think of velociraptors. If you ever watch Jurassic Park, and I keep on coming back to it, but velociraptors, they're like stealth hunters, right? Mm-hmm. This wasn't just this one just walking down the road. The other two stopped shy by 100 yards, maybe 150 yards back, out in the grass, and they laid down, and they stopped moving, and this other one kept walking down the road towards us. And you're like, what are they doing? They're that smart. Mm-hmm. They knew what they're doing, because on the about 100 yards away from us, sideways to us and parallel to the road, was a river or a lake, and they had them trapped, and they knew exactly what they were doing.
Yeah, so to kind of, pick up with the story, we're just waiting. You could see the lioness that's sitting right next to our safari vehicle. You could see them, just like you've ever seen a cat, you've seen a dog, where they kind of just start leaning down, and they just start taking a step, but they're moving super slow and cautiously, and you can see it kind of just starting to walk away from us or prowl towards these buffalo. And then, sure enough, it kind of takes off running. And then the buffalo, they see it coming. Right, they make noise, they're snorting, and all of a sudden, everyone's on the run. So you're watching these three buffalo just take off, and like Tony said, there's a river, there's a pool of water that's off to the side, so they're kind of bound. So they're heading back, basically to where the other two lionesses
He's
were.
Hurting them.
He's hurting them right back to where the other two lionesses are, and they're in flight. So the buffalo are running, the three lionesses are behind them, and then we're just watching this. We're taking video, we're taking camera. You can hear kind of the gasps in our air because I've got some video running, and if everybody starts talking like, oh my gosh, this is going to happen. And we start to see one of the lionesses, start to jump on the back of one of the buffaloes. Because basically what the three lionesses were doing is they're trying to separate one of them. The smallest one, the weakest one, whatever you want. So kind of two of them run off, and there's one left, and they just kind of start jumping on the buffalo.
And I think they got probably about as far away from us as maybe a quarter mile. They were a long ways away, and they were looping and coming back. They ran a long ways away, then they came back, they circled back towards us, and the three lionesses were all attacking one buffalo. And our shutter on my camera couldn't go fast enough. I'm trying to get pictures in and out of the water. It kind of finally came back right towards us, and by this time now we've got a whole bunch of other Jeep safari vehicles all around us. They're all watching this too. There's probably a dozen of them, at least 24. And as that thing got closer, the buffalo, I recall, their defense is, hey, I got to get them off of me. And they can't penetrate that skin. That skin is so tough that they have a hard time penetrating. So it went out into the water. Mm-hmm. And it went out into about like chest high for the buffalo. And the lions don't like water. So they kind of, after a while of sitting there with it, got off and got on the shore, as I recall. And
Yeah,
Well,
go ahead.
I was going to say, obviously cats don't like the water. And so, but more importantly, they can hunt very quickly, but not for very long. They get very, very tired. So they were working, the three of them together, to do all they could to bring this giant water buffalo down. And they were really struggling to do so. And you could tell they're getting tired. So they were kind of taking breaks a little bit, like, I don't know if we can do this. But it was absolutely bonkers to watch. And I feel like we are really a lot closer than quarter mile away. It was just amazing to see. But yeah.
at this point, they were back to about within 100 yards. But when they first ran, they ran so far away from us that it was well over a quarter mile out into this other field. And then the buffalo circled back and came, surprisingly, right back to where we were, which was great, because then we had a front row view of all of this. But yeah, when they were separating that one, they ran a long ways, but then they got it back. Then some of the interesting and kind of unfortunate, but kind of what's going on in the world and tourism came part of that display as what we saw next.
When the buffalo then came out of the water, it was trying to kind of get away a little bit. And our driver, Tom, said that buffalo needs a way out. It needs an escape. And what had happened was, after we were one of the first people upon the lions, other safari vehicles had filled in, and now the buffalo was trapped.
Bumper to bumper on every vehicle, because
Yes.
everybody wants a good view.
Now, Tom knew to move ahead and get out of the way, and a couple other drivers did, but not every driver knew to do that.
So they, when we say bumper to bumper, you got 15 to 20 vehicles bumper to bumper. You got the water, then you got the buffalo, then you got the lions, and then you have all these cars. It's like a wall, and there was no way to get out. So our driver and a couple other ones obviously beat feet and got out of there, being very conscious of the animal and giving him a space. But other people did not. Brian, you want to tell what happened here next? Nobody wants to be the one that explains.
Not really. I don't think anybody wants to tell this part of the story, but obviously watching them hunt, seeing the buffalo escape, this is the circle of life, right? But the buffalo did escape the lion, but as we said, it was kind of trapped, and we had moved out of the way. But unfortunately, it was trying to kind of get to the other side of the road, and more or less, it wound up ramming the side of a different safari vehicle.
Hard.
It ran pretty
them.
hard. It got a little caught up, I think.
More than once.
Yep.
Yeah, because it was frustrated, and it just didn't have a path out. So that's the unfortunate part of humans being in, the space of the animals. But ultimately, the buffalo was perfectly fine and survived everything. So to live on, to another day.
So it got caught on to the bumper of like it was trying to run out. So as the Jeep realized, hey, I got to get out of the way, it started to take off, and the buffalo started running with it and ran with it quite a ways. I don't know, say a half mile away. They ran side by side. But the funny thing about that was, not funny for the animal, but the funny thing was the three lionesses had no clue where the buffalo went, because it kind of was like camouflaged with the vehicle. It drove off and it separated, and then it went running off, and we saw it later on running towards the other two that had gotten away. But for the next half hour, we just sat and watched the three lionesses stand around, looking around like, what happened? Like, where did that buffalo go? They had no clue where it went. It was fascinating to watch.
So I have literally this entire thing from start to finish on video, because Brian and I happen to be, the video people, and Tony and Jennifer took a lot of photos. So I have it all on video, and it was very funny because there was a lioness right in front of our truck, and she gets on top of a little mound, and she's looking around like, seriously, like it just vanished into thin air. She could not figure out what happened to it. But I think the piece here, after this happened, all of us felt very deflated and kind of very sad. Like, we felt like we were in the way of the animal, and we had gotten out of the way. Our car was out of the way. But by our presence being there, humans caused an interaction that was not great. So we were very saddened by that. And it just makes you think about, yes, we are here to appreciate the wildlife, but we have to be really responsible and conscientious of how we do that. And I think that's an important part of travel. Wherever you are in the world, be cognizant of the local culture, of what you're bringing to the table, follow the lead of the people who live there and know better. So it just kind of all made us a little bit sad that night. We're like, okay, I think we need to be done. And honestly, we were very like lured back to our tents because it was so peaceful and so lovely. And we told our driver, we're done. We're calling it on this one. We've seen everything we could possibly want to see, and some we didn't. And we need to be finished. Let's go back to our lovely camp and enjoy the sunset. Jennifer, what do you think?
I think this is a good time to talk about a word that I learned actually about the gorillas, but applies here, is that for the most part, all of the animals in all of these national parks are habituated, meaning they're used to having humans around. They don't react to the trucks. They don't react to the people. They just go about their daily lives, and you're just able to sit with a front row seat and really not impact them at all. However, I mean, there was one time when we startled an elephant, and it raised its ears at us and was startled. But this is a time when we did, not us specifically, but the other vehicle did actually invade their life, and in a less than positive way.
We did hear, though, and find out that that guy was going to be definitely reprimanded, if not fired, because they are supposed to have zero interaction with the animals. He says that guy's in a lot of trouble. So that guide. So, I mean, everybody else should learn from that at that point. So
Another plug for having a great driver.
Yeah, that is definitely something that we had. So let's talk about a little bit what it was like to be in these two parks, and which one was your favorite and why. So like Ngorongoro or the Serengeti, if you could only choose one, hypothetically, which one would you choose?
I mean, if I could only choose one, I absolutely would choose the Serengeti. I think it's, the one that people most imagine when you kind of think of Africa and you think of the vast openness that's there, the expansive plains, the incredible wildlife, the spectacular sunsets that we experienced. I enjoyed, every part of the trip, including the camp, like we said. Even that day when we cut out early, we went back to the camp and we were having gin and tonics and playing little cards. So, there was all kinds of...
They made their own gin there.
Yes.
Jennifer?
If I had to pick only one park, I would not do it and go to both.
Okay, so now we have since
There's always one person that has to do that.
So I'm going to go and just say I like Serengeti best, but you have the better chance of, or higher likely chance of seeing less animals at Serengeti than you maybe have at the other parks. Tarangire, for one, probably the most animals. Number 2, Ngorongoro, and number 3, Serengeti, and then Marinara. I'm saying marinara like it's like, yeah, no, I'm thinking it's a sauce. We're going with sauce. So marinara. But the reward at Serengeti is such a high level that like that high level peak could be awesome, which we saw. And you're not going to necessarily see that at those other parks. So I like the Serengeti for the rawness of it out in the park. It's not as tailored, like when you're in the volcano, it's all right there. You're going to see everything. You're going to get to do things. You're going to go see everything. But when you're out there and you're trying to drive from rock outcropping to try and find, leopards and different things, and out in the Serengeti or lions attacking, could be lucky or could be unlucky in seeing some of that stuff.
You know what I appreciated too, and this isn't necessarily park specific, but I just thought of it, is that when you are out on these safaris and you have a guide, they're so knowledgeable and educational, not only about where to find a particular animal, but then they're also describing the animal behaviors and why they do certain things. Like I can think of a couple instances. One time we were watching a pride of lions, or a few lions that were literally kind of wandering around the car. Sometimes they will lay in the shadow of your safari vehicle because it's cooler there. There's a tiny bit of shade, of which they do not find that much of on the Serengeti Plain. So they will get really close to you, and they won't even look at you or look at the vehicle. They just don't even care. But in this one particular time, one of the lions was really skinny. And we're like, why is he so skinny? And so then he kind of explains, well, he's probably an older one. And so then he's talking about the dynamics within the pride. And it was just really interesting. And then, of course, the hunters are always the lionesses, never the males. Just like it is at home. We cook the dinner and you guys just come home from work and eat it. I'm sorry, in our family. But then the other one I think was really interesting. Like we would see herds of wildebeest and zebras all together at the same time. Like when you encounter zebras, you generally encounter the wildebeest and vice versa. And then you kind of wonder, why are they all together at the time? And he said, well, the reason being is it's a very symbiotic relationship because the zebras have exceptional eyesight. So they can see really far in the distance and they can spot when there's a threat. But the wildebeests have terrible eyesight, so they can't see what the heck's coming down the pipe. But they have really acute hearing and a great sense of smell. So when they team up together, they're kind of the full package. So those are things that you would have no idea about unless you had a really knowledgeable driver. And that was super interesting to me.
Speaking of wildebeest, I was surprised a little bit at how much I enjoyed. If you had asked me before I left, I would have said, I can't wait to see the giraffes. They're beautiful. The giant elephants, my big five. But I wouldn't have really cared. But we had so much fun watching those little warthogs, how they would like get down on their elbows, and like the wildebeests.
Okay, so we're going to explain that because they didn't make out of context. You have no idea why she said they get on their elbows. So they are so stubby that in their necks and their heads are so weird in how they're shaped that they can't just tilt their head down and eat. They have to get down on their elbows so that they can get their mouth down to the ground to eat the grass. So it looks funny when they pop down on their elbows and they eat. It's just a unique look. It's really cute.
Yeah.
For a hideous looking beast.
That we found really cute, actually.
Yeah. After a while, we really did.
They were highly entertaining, and I think that when you watch The Lion King, the warthog in there, it's very apropos to his personality, don't you think? Like that was kind of, they're like doo-doo, doo-doo. Yeah. They're just kind of funny little creatures. Okay, so was there a misconception or maybe a worry that you had about going to Africa or taking a safari that turned out to be completely false? Something that you shouldn't have even worried about?
Okay, this isn't a worry, but it's a misconception that I think we need to clear up. That since you mentioned Lion King, nobody says Hakuna Matata. It's made up.
We found that out by asking, and they're like, yeah, that's not something that people say.
Nobody says it.
Brian, you got anything that misconception or something that you thought of beforehand? Nope, he's shaking his head. It's really great for radio and podcasts.
Okay, well, we did have a mishap that was kind of funny. So you're told to make sure that when you, like, if you have food, do not leave it in your tents. Like, make sure you have it wrapped up. And there may have been one time where neither Brian and I did that very well. Do you want to explain what happened there?
All right, I guess I do have a mishap now that you put it that way. I kind of had forgotten about this. So as you'll hear about in a future episode when we talk about Uganda, which was going to be Jennifer's birthday, which was the following week, I had brought with a couple of special treats. Well, the couple of treats that I had brought with were chocolate and candy. And I left them in the original package thinking, oh, that'll be fine. Well, it was fine until the day that we stayed at that camp, at the Serengeti camp in the Serengeti. And it was kind of an interesting episode, but ultimately what happened is there wound up being ants in my backpack. So, that's an incident.
Not just a few ants.
Just a few.
Yeah, no, it was loaded with ants.
The crazy thing is that happened to me as well. So I had also brought chocolate for Jennifer, and I had noticed, oh gosh, there's some ants in my backpack. And then our guide was like, I told you not to have any food in your tent. I'm like, well, I kind of forgot. I was thinking open food, right? So I didn't have open food. So I had to end up putting my backpack on the front porch of our tent. And they said by the end of the day, the ants, once you've disposed of the candy, which our people at the camp did, by the end of the day, the ants will have gone out of your backpack and have gone search elsewhere for other food. And at that moment in time, Brian was like, ding, ding, ding. Hang on. I have an idea.
I think we were actually in the safari vehicle already for our morning going out, and I opened my backpack and it's just full of ants. So now we're in crisis mode. We got to get it out of the vehicle and got to get it emptied out. But
yeah, it wasn't our shiny moment. So there you go. We're saving you the trouble. Now you know.
Don't bring with any sweet treats.
No, you need to get rid of those.
So I've already talked about which was my favorite parks all in all, 4 and 4, and I think we've discussed that a little bit. I think everybody likes the Serengeti and Ngorongoro probably the most, but Serengeti might have the most wildlife right up on you. Was there a part of this experience that was much easier or harder on you than you anticipated? Did you think it was going to be harder or easier?
I would say it was easier to get up at the crack of dawn every day because I was so excited at what we were going to do every day. I mean, we went all day long, but you're not putting on a lot of steps because you are sitting in a safari vehicle all day and you can't wander far from camp, if you know what I mean. So it wasn't that taxing. I would say it was easier than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I mean, when you tell people that you're going to Africa for almost 3 weeks, right? The perception everybody has is, oh wow, you're going to really be roughing it. And we had good food, great accommodations, and I didn't feel like it. It exceeded expectations, I'd say, from all of those perspectives as far as just the whole trip.
The part that I actually thought was harder than I expected was, in some ways, I do think it was hard to be in a safari vehicle for 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Like, you do get actually quite fatigued. And yes, you're not putting on a lot of steps. In fact, you're not even allowed out of the vehicle. And by the way, if you need to go to the bathroom when you're on the Serengeti plain, you can. He prefers that you do a quick pee, and it has to be in the back of the vehicle, and he's standing out there watching guard while you do it. Like, he'll turn his head so he's not watching you, but it is a little bit of an uncomfortable thing. You're like, okay, this is fun, but it is kind of exhausting because your eyes are peeled all day long. So you have that intense focus that you are, scanning the horizon, scanning the trees, scanning the grasses constantly all day, every day. And it can actually be a little bit exhausting.
I have one comment about the fatigue. If anybody really wants to see how tiring it is, I have got a great little video of all three of them, Julie, Jennifer, and Brian, asleep with mouth open, maybe a little drool coming down, all just riding in this Jeep. And I'm like the only one awake looking around with binoculars and cameras, and they're just wiped out. So that, if you request, I might put that video out there. No, I won't. I'm just kidding. But an expectation that I kind of thought was surprising to me was when you drive from Ngorongoro out to Serengeti, it is one road. It is a massive highway, gravel, washboard highway, and it is so packed with cars. I mean, it is a thoroughfare from one end of the country to the other, and it's the only way. There's no other road. And we saw a lot of traffic, and we came upon an accident like maybe just seconds after it happened. Somebody in a Jeep ran into the back of a semi, and the semi back into the truck came in right into the cab and kind of locked down the door, and we got involved in a rescue getting him out of that vehicle, actually. So that could have been any vehicle for that matter, and you got to be you're thinking that's not what you're going to see. You're thinking you're going to be the only vehicle out on the Serengeti plains, just out there by yourself. No, there's a lot of cars going to and from, but when you're out on safari, it's very remote and very quiet.
And that road was in such bad shape that
Always.
Our driver chose to go off the road and just drive and dodge the little bushes.
Right. He swerved off the road by about 50 yards and just drove on the ground, just normal ground, which is the same as the road, just not graded.
Now, there's an opportunity to not do this driving. Like, my sister flew. So they did Ngorongoro and the Serengeti, but they flew from one to the other instead of driving it in a smaller plane.
And we could have done that too. It would have added expenses to an already 18-day expensive trip. So, and since we were going on a progression from, east to west, from the airport to Arusha, to Tarangire, to Manyara, to Ngorongoro, and then to Serengeti, and then we were continuing west and north on a bush plane up to Uganda. So we just thought it's a natural, normal drive. We'll just drive it. But it was like a 5-hour drive from Ngorongoro out to Serengeti.
Okay, let's talk about some advice we'd give to people. So, for example, I'm curious, do you guys think this is an all ages kind of trip? Like, what do you think? Is it for kids? Is it for seniors? And I don't mean seniors in high school. I mean some of our older friends and family. Would you recommend it for certain age groups?
I don't think you would bring young school-aged children. I mean, I think you could bring teenagers perhaps if they were into this. But, I mean, think about that lion experience we had with the buffalo. The car or the safari vehicle that got gored by the buffalo contained children in it. The vehicle didn't tip over, but it rocked, and it was for sure a traumatic experience for that child.
And also the hours. I mean, you're up early. It's long days. There's a lot of sitting around. You have to have patience. Got to be quiet. A lot of time you got to be quiet when you're sitting still with the vehicles because you don't want to spook the animals. So I don't know if it's conducive. I mean, yes, it'd be awesome to bring kids and give them that kind of an experience, but is it the best for them? I don't know. I'm not so sure on that one.
I guess you know your children. I mean, a person would know their children best. If your children could sit for 7 hours with binoculars or a camera in their hand all day in
For
a
multiple
vehicle,
days.
yeah, for multiple days in a row, then maybe. But I don't know.
All right.
I
So
wouldn't bring mine.
along those lines, what advice would you give to someone thinking about going on safari?
Well, I think we talked about some of this stuff at the beginning, right? It's all about proper planning for the trip. So I think our experience with using a travel company that's very experienced in the area and knows the specific locations, knows how to hook you up with good driver company and all those types of things, I think is very important. And don't bring any candy.
Right.
And also, too, I think it's, you can take organized tours for something like this. It's absolutely a possibility. I really enjoyed the fact that we had a solo guide, like we had one driver for just the four of us. So we created our own itinerary. If we wanted to sleep in a little bit later, which that actually didn't happen, but hypothetically it could have, or that night we wanted to ditch out a little early. Like if we were in a big group, you're kind of going with the flow with everybody else. So you can kind of be the master of your own planning when you have your own private. So I would say if you're going to spend a little extra money, maybe do it on that, because I do think that is important. But there are a lot of organized tours, and we're actually on one of those in our next podcast when we talk about Uganda. We'll be doing an organized tour.
Small group tour.
Small group, yeah. So is this a once-in-a-lifetime adventure, the safari, you guys, or would you do it again? And would you, if you did do a safari again, would you come back here or go somewhere else?
Well, you mentioned that I hadn't done a lot of traveling. So in my mind, although this was an amazing trip, there are a lot of other places I need to see, right? So
I'm with you.
it's going to have to go below some of that. I would definitely be interested in doing another safari again. I probably would just pick a different country, maybe South Africa or Kenya.
I got another place picked out, don't worry. Zimbabwe on the north border. It's the Mana Pools, and it looks amazing. So I've got another spot. So what about you, Brian?
I definitely would be interested in doing another one, but I think, as Jennifer said, probably other things would rank ahead of it. But I would go back to do that hike at Kilimanjaro.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'll go with that.
So I think when we finished the trip, I was pretty tired. I was like, wow, I've seen all the animals. We did all the things. I think we had a best case scenario with the entire trip. I felt like we left nothing on the table. And I was pretty exhausted. I'm like, okay, I've seen thousands of animals. I'm good. Check. But now talking about it, now I'm getting excited again. I'm like, ooh, I'd go another one. And I would go back to that area because I think it's epic. But maybe if we were there with our older children or other family members that hadn't seen it yet, then it would be fresh in their eyes and kind of a new experience. But yeah, I'm up for Zimbabwe.
Okay, so rehashing this trip was almost as much fun as it was taking it, but not really. And we are so grateful for Jennifer and Brian, because we've traveled a lot with them to do this. So we the nice thing about traveling with people that you know so well is they can put up with your idiosyncrasies, and I have a lot of them, so thank you. I know that of the four, I'm the one that you have to deal with. And the outcome is that we can travel together worldwide, and we're still great friends. Looking forward to our next adventure.
Yeah, because we are not done yet. He mentioned Zimbabwe, but that's not actually on the books. That was totally off the cuff. But we do have an epic trip on the books planned for next spring to a place that I think is probably on all four of our bucket list. Not that it's called bucket list. I'm sorry, experiential, I don't know, moments, whatever you want to call it. But anyway, we're going to Machu Picchu in Peru. Brian, is this something that is high on your list or your whatever you want to call it?
Well, I don't have that bucket list, but yes, experiencing Peru, Machu Picchu, with friends, going with you guys, learning about the history, the culture, the ancient civilization, how people lived. It sounds like another chapter for the life resume.
Any thoughts of the upcoming trip for you, Jen?
I'm very excited. We get to fish for piranhas in the Amazon, and we're going to walk along on like a canopy treetop in the rainforest, like to see the life that's up in the trees.
You mean birds?
There'll be birds, yes.
Lots of birds.
And monkeys and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, I'm very excited.
By the way, Africa, birds. You guys, these people were on my case about being a birder, and I'm always wanting to stop and look at birds. But by the end of this trip, you guys were as much of a birder as I was trying to see new birds and point them out first. Like, I know you got almost competitive with wanting to find a new bird that we hadn't seen yet. Jennifer, I'm looking at you. And I hope you guys had as much fun as I did. But thank you guys, because when we went to Uganda, we spent a whole entire day on one bird, but you'll have to wait for that one. Okay. Well, that will do it for this episode of Me and Her Travel podcast. Thank you for joining us, on these, 2 episodes. We hope that we inspired you to maybe think about an African safari, and for your next big adventure, you consider these ones. Stay where you want, but make sure you get a good guide. That's probably the most important thing that we've been saying to you, and plan it out well. We intend to bring you a podcast on Uganda soon. Maybe it's the next one. Maybe it won't be after that, but we'll see. And until then, it's
Wheels up.